Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sacred Games Daily. It is March 19th, 2024, a Tuesday, and I'm here with my buddy Joe Smalley. We're going to talk about some game news. How you feeling, Joe?
Good. Just got out of the shower, feeling rejuvenated. This is how you know I love you. Because for video watchers right now, put my t-shirt on so you don't have to see my dirty, hairy nips. You know what I'm saying?
Nice. That's great.
I'm being considerate, you know?
Maybe if you had done that, though, and we put it in the thumbnail, maybe we'd get more hits.
Maybe next time. Maybe next time, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll consider that for
How are you, though, Brian? You always ask me how I am, but how are you?
I'm pretty good. My little brother just had his first child,
Awesome.
hours ago, so
Yeah.
that's pretty exciting. Been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is great, and got a couple good news stories. So it's a pretty good day. I had a nice Subway sandwich today that
jealous.
hit the spot. Yeah,
I had my own sandwich that I made, and it's nothing on Subway.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, Subway's not that great, but I mean, it's
Subway's
still
really good over here. I don't know,
sandwiches. Okay.
I know in the
Maybe
US, people compare Jersey Mike's a lot to Subway, but we don't have that.
I think Subway is one of the worst sandwich places over here, personally.
Wow.
I like Jersey Mike's. I like Quiznos, Jimmy John's. I think they're all better. But okay, we'll move on to the game news.
Yeah, enough about sandwiches.
We'll go first to our Alone in the Dark review from Eurogamer. So, new big game release today. I mean, I think I would call it a big game release. We could kind of go back and forth on how big it is. But Alone in the Dark, it's another reboot of the series, a familiar series done by Pisces Interactive. I looked them up. Really, all they've done that I kind of knew was some Titan Quest stuff, like expansions or whatnot. Yeah. But this is Alone in the Dark. It's got David Harbour as a main character. And the reviews came out today, and they're not very good. Metacritic's in the low 60s. Most of the reviews are, anywhere from 2 to 7, and mostly on the low side. But we're going to go ahead and pull an excerpt from Eurogamer here. I don't think there's many people in our community that have been excited for Alone in the Dark. I think Corey Hanks
Shout out to Black
was interested in it. We've been in a time of horror game renaissance, where we've had Resident Evil remakes and Alan Wake and
Dead Space.
There's a couple of Dead Space, exactly. Maybe Silent Hill remake later this year. It's up for debate if
Callisto almost got there.
So we're hoping this would be another one, and it seems unfortunately Alone in the Dark did not land the plane. So final paragraph from this review here with the score. I'll read it to you guys. It says, and if a puzzle-heavy action horror game has repetitive puzzles, poor combat, and little to no horror, well, what's left? Sadly, not even a Hollywood cast is enough to gloss over Alone in the Dark's considerable flaws. 2 out of 5 stars. So this is one of the bigger blunders this year. I would say this is me projecting on review scores I've seen, so my opinion holds pretty much next to nothing. I haven't played the game, all that. But this seems to be worse received than even something like Suicide Squad, which has kind of been the punching bag this year. Suicide Squad had this noticeable stuff in it that we wanted and we were excited about and cared about, but it was packaged in a way we didn't like with a lot of baggage. This kind of just seems to be below average game maybe altogether. I mean, the puzzles aren't good, the combat's not good, it's not very scary, there's not much horror. It's kind of what's here. Does this surprise you at all, Joe? And is this something that you would have played before bad scores, or is it something you would consider playing now on a deep sale?
This is probably something I'd never ever play. And shout out to the people that are still interested in Alone in the Dark. It was quite, as far as I'm aware, a rather unique horror game back in the day. But I have to say, this is kind of your second strike now. Obviously, they came out with an Alone in the Dark. Was it a reboot back in the 7th generation on the Xbox 360 and stuff? And that didn't do great. So you're not 3 strikes and you're out quite yet, but you're 2 for 2 on some of the potentially worst, in that bracket of worst games ever made or most disappointing games ever made. And is it time to potentially just retire this license entirely, this IP? Is it cursed, does it have is it haunted, Well, I wonder, what teams have they given it to, because they gave this to Pisces Interactive, who I didn't even know before today, and like I said, I looked up their things they've done before, and it was nothing too exciting. No.
I think it goes without saying that if a Naughty Dog or a Santa Monica or whoever took this IP, we'd be looking at something very different. But the thing is, once you get into a prestigious studio of that caliber, they don't want to work on somebody else's IP. Or if they do, it's something much more notorious isn't the word. Something much more famous, like Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man is an honor for Insomniac, despite them being a great studio with their own IP.
Sure.
Alone in the Dark wouldn't be something where you'd say, "Oh, I don't want to make my own IPs. I want to go do this." So if they keep getting, I don't know who did the game for the 7th generation, but developers like Pisces Interactive most likely not going to churn out a banger. And if you are going to get someone like Pisces Interactive, maybe you should have went for something smaller scope, because this has like kind of the AAA sheen on it, and maybe it didn't need that. Maybe it could have been a better game if it was something a little less ambitious.
Yeah, the original developers of the 7th gen version was split between 2 teams: Eden Games and Mighty Rocket Studio. Eden did Test Drive Unlimited. I'm sure you know of that series. Yeah. But yeah, no one particularly noteworthy. But it's one of those things where, like you said, prestigious studios, especially under the same banner, don't really want to work on other people's projects. I mean, I think of Ben's studio, how they were put on the Uncharted remake, and there was a lot of like internal kind of fallout with that. Like rumblings. It wasn't confirmed, but people weren't happy in Bend because they basically, Days Gone 2 was like all set up in their mind and in pre-production, and then it got kind of slashed and stuff because obviously the first one didn't sell very well and wasn't received very well critically. So yeah, I can't see this series like getting put onto a big studio. Obviously THQ Nordic owns the license, owns the IP, and it's kind of a shame, because like I'm a big fan of like survival horror, and it's always nice to see, like, because right now you've kind of got like Resident Evil, and then like you can't even really consider Dead Space because they might not even remake the second one. So, like, you have Resident Evil. Like, that's kind of... Unless I'm missing, like, something that goes toe-to-toe with Resident Evil on the survival horror term.
Not as of now, I don't think.
The only thing that's going is really Resident Evil consistently on that AAA quality. So it's a shame that, like... And I said, like, when...
Alan Wake gave it a run for its money critically.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like, Alan Wake, I don't really... Like, it is survival horror, but I always put it more in, like, a thriller sense, And maybe Corey would shoot me for saying that.
I haven't played the second one, but what I've heard is it's actually terrifying.
Spooky, yeah. I think it leans potentially more... Like, when I played the original Alan Wake, and I haven't played the second one, so, like, excuse my ignorance, but it was always more of, like, a... Like a just kind of a thriller essentially.
I think that's changed for the second one, but I could also be wrong.
Yeah, but when I saw Alone in the Dark, this reboot or whatever, get trailered, get shown, I was like, this is kind of cool, because this is kind of them like seeing again, like if it's got that, it's kind of like a more ambitious version of Silent Hill: The Short Message, where it's kind of them dipping the toe in the water, kind of figuring out whether there's interest for the IP, whether this team can do it. And unfortunately, because of the critical reception and the previews not being so good, I just don't think there's a future for this. So
yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, this is not a game I was particularly interested in, even if it turned out great. So with the low scores, I probably wouldn't pick it up even at a sale, but hopefully there is an audience for this. I don't know what kind of sales they were expecting to make this worthwhile. I can't imagine, especially, we talk about 2023 being such a busy year. This has been a pretty busy year, and we still have other things coming really, really soon, like Rise of the Ronin, Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm thinking this will get buried. I'm thinking this will not be good for Pisces Interactive / TH Nordic.
No.
And I don't wish any ill will. Of course, I don't want people to lose jobs, and I'm sure there's like hard work and passion that went into this, but this just doesn't bode well. I think not only will this be forgotten, I don't even know if many people are really talking about it right now.
No.
So, yeah.
Yep.
But we'll move on to the next story. I thought this one was interesting because I think there's a lot we could say about this. IGN exclusive, Connie Booth, one of the chief architects of PlayStation's first-party studio system, is joining EA. Former PlayStation executive Connie Booth, one of the chief architects of PlayStation's first-party strategy before her unexpected departure in 2023, is joining EA to help lead its studios amid its ongoing restructure. Booth's title will be Group General Manager, Action RPG, with a portfolio that will include EA Motive, who's doing Iron Man, Cliffhanger, who's doing Black Panther, and Bioware, who's doing Dragon Age and Mass Effect. She will report directly to EA Entertainment head Laura Meal. I thought I saw on a different article, not this one. I thought Respawn also fell under her, but I don't see that at the top. But basically what makes this so interesting is having a high-profile person like Connie Booth, who was one of the architects behind the first-party studio system at Sony, which Sony is routinely known as, like, when it comes to fidelity and cinematic and critical experiences, Sony is, like, number one in the industry. I mean, like, as far as, like, successful IPs, you could say Nintendo, because, like, they're more successful with their IPs than Sony, but, like, they go for something completely different. As far as, like I said, that AAA kind of cinematic flair, Sony's kind of number one. So having someone who was behind that come over to EA and work behind things like the Black Panther game, the Iron Man game, BioWare's games, I feel like it could only be a benefit to have her kind of strategic knowledge and maybe help EA shift in a direction where they're just putting out well-made single-player games with great stories. I don't know. What do you think about this, Joe? Do you think it's going to be a big benefit like I think it will be, or is this going to largely go undetected?
No, I think she's a massive asset. I think one of the things that we always seem to do as customers is we kind of glorify the developers on the assembly line, which we definitely should do, like a Cory Barlog or a, Eric Williams or whatever, and even obviously people below that, Yumi Yang, stuff like that. But I think what we don't do is oftentimes glorify and praise the executive people who are the pencil pushers, but, sort of orchestrate everything. Someone's got to conduct, the orchestra, and someone's got to, command the boat, captain the ship.
Yeah.
But, I mean, she goes back all the way to, the 90s, where she, like, executive produced, I think, as far as I'm aware, and produced with Naughty Dog, doing Crash Bandicoot, which was one of the innate successes of the PlayStation, So she's a very, very sort of core character in individual in Sony, or was, up to October 2023. But it's she was also another person who, like, constantly, like, brought in people of the, like, new generation into the studios and stuff like that. Rolling over the old guard, the new guard, keeping things going. Keeping the new blood cells rejuvenating. But I think this is really important, because the thing is, right, is like, let's look at BioWare, for example. When they were developing Anthem, you had a lot of people who was toxic in the upper echelon of BioWare at the time, and there were people, with the Jason Schreier, expose, loads of people crying in cupboards and being really stressed about their jobs, serious HR complaints, being put on the back burner, and she could be potentially the individual who comes in and sort of steers them away from that if they haven't done so already. We don't necessarily know what that's like anymore, but she could potentially be the person that kind of goes, hang on a minute, this is kind of wrong. This is very wrong. This is toxic. We need some new people in. We need some fresh talent. This is not working. And you need to be remanaged, essentially. Whether that means unfortunate layoffs, depending on the individual, or whether that is just, moving them to different studios, cycling them around, whatever, happens within this industry. She can potentially be the individual that sort of brings EA's first-party single-player scene to a whole new, like, prestigious level. And I think it's needed, I think we should be celebrating this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting. I don't know what to make of this, but Marcus Leto, who was a co-creator of Halo, he was leading a studio focused on a Battlefield, like, single-player game.
He joined DICE, right?
And I don't know. It was its own studio. I think it was called, like, Ridgeline Games.
Oh, Ridgeline,
like that.
Yeah.
So
right.
it wasn't... Yeah, and it was a single-player effort led by him, and he was there for... I think over a year, I think maybe close to 2 years, and he left just recently. And once he left, EA pretty much laid off a bunch of the team, if not the whole team, I can't recall. And a few days later, a week later on Twitter, Marcus Leto was like, I don't really have anything I can say because anything I have to say about EA is not positive.
Yeah, that was quite quiet as well. I remember, like, it kind of not being such a big headline news until, like, afterwards, and yeah. I think it's one of those things where people we really do underestimate and underappreciate, like, the where the book stops at the top. We always use that phrase as, like, a negative connotation when something wrong goes when something wrong happens in the industry or in development. and that we're calling for people's heads or whatever, which I don't ever think should be the case, even if you don't like a game or whatever. But I think we should also praise the people that are at the top, when things are smooth and they get in new positions and stuff. So, yeah, this is fantastic.
That's a great point. I don't want to go on too long belaboring your point, but like this also reminds me of some more recent news lately of Sony having issues with Bungie, their acquisition of Bungie and that studio. And what it seems like the trend that's kind of been painted with Bungie, we're starting to see again now that there's new reports that Sony's not happy with Bungie, is that under Microsoft, they were kind of unruly. Mm-hmm. Under Activision, they were kind of unruly. And here under Sony, they're kind of unruly. And the rumor is that they don't really have like a very high top level, like smooth way of running the company. It's more just like, I don't want to say it's like chaotic and free, because that's not what I'm hearing, but it's more like we kind of do what we want and make it work.
Yeah.
Rather than having a structure. And like, I think maybe when we've been like frustrated at some of the things that Bungie has done with Destiny or Bungie has done under Activision, maybe it wasn't always Activision or always Microsoft that the issue was with. Maybe it was Bungie. Maybe it was a perfect culmination of Bungie's ambition and their camaraderie with some of Microsoft's structure that created those Halo games that we know to be some of the best games ever made. Yeah. It's easy to just be like, that was Bungie and Microsoft screwed them. But it's probably more than that.
And it's one of those things where I go back to Anthem. People were calling for EA's, throats. When Anthem came out, like, it's all EA, it's all the executives. It wasn't. A lot of it was the higher echelon of Bioware. EA came to them, and the game wasn't even out of pre-production within the first year of pre-production development. So we don't know. The thing is, guys, is like we sit here and we critique and stuff, but like in all honesty, like we get a keyhole view through the keyhole. Yeah. And I think it's so important sometimes, like, or all the time, to just sit back and relax and just kind of just let things marinate a little bit,
we have no idea. Like, for all we know, Connie Booth made a Naughty Dog game we love better. You know, maybe she saved it from a developer doing something that would have been dumb, or we didn't like. There's just so much we don't know, and all we can do is speculate. So
yes, exactly. Hi there. Thank you so much for sticking with us up until this point in the episode, whether via audio or video. We greatly appreciate it. Now, if you're new here, make sure you join the Sacred Icon Discord. We'd love to have you there to talk all things pop culture or just talk about general life stuff. Make sure you join. We're always listening. We're always open to that stuff. And I'd also be remiss to not mention the Sacred Icon podcast. That's obviously available on Spotify, Apple, Google, etc., etc. That is hosted by Bryan and Josh. They have an amazing chemistry that is irreplaceable, and it can never be emulated. They talk all things from movies, to video games. It's a great time. And definitely go check that out. All those links for the Discord and the Spotifys and everything are down below / on screen now if you're watching. But anyways, back to the episode.
Joe, I cut out a couple stories because we have a clip from our friend Wesley.
Ooh.
And he brought up some great talking points on this voice clip, which I think will inspire the rest of this episode. I think it's funny to note, and Wesley wanted me to shout it out, so I'll do that here first as a precursor. So Wesley sent this in to Sacred Games Daily. As you know, we're a companion podcast to the main show, Sacred Icon, and Wesley has sent in clips to Sacred Icon before. So when he sent in this clip specifically to Sacred Games Daily, he opens up by saying, "Hey, Bryan and Josh, you guys
this
are doing
motherfucker. I've been here for 6-7 episodes."
Yep. And Joe was all like, we're getting a voice clip. I've never had a voice clip on a show I've been on. And then here comes the voice clip, and he gives Josh props, and not Joe. So Josh isn't even here for this episode. It's Joe, and Wes knows he slipped up here and said the wrong name, but he is talking to us. He is asking these questions to us, so it's. I thought that was pretty funny, but I'm going to go ahead and play this here, Joe. Give me a thumbs up if the voice clip sounds good on your end.
Hey, Bryan and Josh. It's your boy Wes. In the spirit of the show, I will keep this nice and succinct. I got 2 questions for you. Number 1 is, what do you guys think of the recently canceled and leaked Spider-Man multiplayer game, The Great Web? I assume that it's part of what Sony's been up to with focusing more on their single player experiences. You know, they recently canceled that Last of Us multiplayer project, so it makes sense to me. But with the leaks, it was kind of sad to see the game. To me, looked like it was really far along. Like it looked pretty polished. It looked fun too. So I guess sad in that respect, but you know, I think you guys would agree with me. Not super into multiplayer games nowadays, with a few exceptions. So if Sony wants to focus more on their single player stuff, it's fine by me. But kind of sad to see a game that looks this finished, you know, go under. Number 2 is, what do you guys think of the Palworld developers saying recently that they are too successful from a monetary standpoint? I don't know about you guys, but I would love to be too successful. So I'm just curious, besides how funny that sounds, there must be like a practical reason, you know, there must be a reason that they're saying that. And I got the feeling, or maybe it was directly stated from this particular, you know, bite of news, that it's not referring to manpower, it's specifically referring to the money coming in. Like, how is that an issue? I'm sure there's something I'm missing. You know, I'm not a money genius, but it's just funny. So anyway, I know you guys will have great feedback for that. You have had great takes on news thus far, and I know that'll continue. Sacred Games Daily has been awesome. You know, as a listener, I think it's great to have that 1-2 punch of, you know, the regular Sacred Icon show and then this news podcast. So keep it up, guys. I'm loving it. You guys are doing great. It's great to hear you both. Keep it sacred daily.
What a nice guy Wesley is.
I know,
Thank you
right?
so much
What
for that,
the
dude.
fuck?
Really appreciate that.
Got me creasing. Got me grinning.
Yeah, I could see you creasing. I'm gonna go ahead and pop off on this stuff for a bit, and then I'll pass over to you, Joe, so you can comment. So first of all, going into the multiplayer Spider-Man game that was canceled, couple thoughts there. One, this is more speculation / hearsay on my part, but I heard several people comment on, if you watch that leaked Spider-Man multiplayer game, it looks like they used a lot of pre-existing models and costumes, and that the female and male models and animations are the same. Also, the trailer, or it's not really a trailer, the piece of video that we're seeing for that game wasn't cut to be shown in some kind of professional capacity. So what it looks like they did was they used assets they already had to make a mock-up to present this. So I don't actually know if it was anywhere near as far along as we might think it was. I would wager that was more of like a here's what it could be, but it's not really even developed yet. So I don't like. It might be a shame in the sense that if it was really good, we're not getting it. But in the sense that they wasted a bunch of time and got it really far, and then they canceled it. I don't think that's the case. I don't think it ever got that far. If Insomniac Spider-Man multiplayer game could come out and be done well, that's great, right? Like I will only welcome that, despite me not being a multiplayer person. But I think with Spider-Man's strength being in its single player kind of games, and Insomniac mostly doing that, and then them canceling this, I do think that's something more to be happy or not proud of, but to be thankful for, because we've seen so many games come out that it's clear from even before they come out, like nobody really wanted this is going to fail, and then it comes out and it just fails. It's like it's even like Suicide Squad, like we all kind of just predicted how that was going to go, and then literally from the announcement, years went by, and it came out and it just went exactly how everyone thought. Like a lot of times it's not a big shocker, it's just this is how it turns out and that's how it is. So I think we should be more thankful that this got put aside before it potentially came out and failed, and also sidelined their ability to put out single player Spider-Man games or Wolverine or anything else. So I think that's beneficial. Now, as far as the Palworld thing goes, I actually loved hearing this. I'm surprised I never brought it up on either of our shows when it first came out, that they basically had all this money that they were like, oh, it's too much. We've seen so many times that when a company has success, they keep expanding and expanding and expanding. More talent, more people, bigger studio, bigger games, bigger ambitions, new talent, everything. It just keeps going.
I know where you're going.
And what ends up happening is, yeah, sure, they're like tens of millions of dollars ahead of where they needed to be, but they've now grown so fast, so exponentially, that the money starts to chug out really quick, and before you know it, We see that Pocket Pair, who does Palworld, is shuttering their doors and going and closing because they can't afford to keep their 600 employees employed, and these people are getting laid off and losing their jobs. And then that's when everyone starts to ask the question, man, remember when Palworld came out and it was this huge hit and they made all this money? How in the world could this happen? How could they lay off all these people and not give them any money, severance and anything like that? And it's like, well, it's obvious now. They expanded too quickly. They didn't just let a thing be what it is. And there's such an expectation when a game becomes as big as Palworld that it will grow to the size of the expectation people have from the popularity it has, right? Like now, a lot of people out there are expecting, Palworld's going to have, way more guns, way more pals, way more modes. It's going to come to more systems. It's going to have better graphics. And I think what this dude is saying is, hey, this is who we are. We're this small team. We made this game. It didn't cost that much money. We love the success, but we kind of hope there's not an expectation that we're going to completely transform into something we never were. We're not going to become a AAA mainstream studio because we technically can. We want to stick with what we know and what we do well, and this is where we're at. And that's kind of, I think it's kind of a way of saying, like, we appreciate the success and the money, but like, I hope you don't feel that we need to reflect that with completely changing who we are and expanding way too quickly. So those are my thoughts on the Spider-Man game and Palworld. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, for the Spider-Man stuff, Wes, like, I was kind of like intrigued by this as soon as I saw the leak. I was like, oh shit, like, what is this? And I originally didn't even see that it was a leak first, like the cancelled leak. Like, I was like, oh, like, this is kind of dope. Like, because I've always wanted, like, even from the first game when Miles Morales got bit by the spider and showed his powers off, I was like, oh shit, you know what that opens up? Potential for like co-op campaign drop in, drop out playthroughs or whatever. Like, that shit would be so dope. And as much as I like my tight, confined, solid first party Sony experiences, like, I was like kind of like, why don't Insomniac try and do something completely crazy and wild for a second? And it's not like they never do, because they always, with like Rift Apart or whatever it was called, for Ratchet and Clank, that was like doing something new and different, and then like the sort of mechanics of Spider-Man 2 kind of built upon that, like SSD and stuff like that. But but at the same time when I saw it, I was like, it's gonna be it was gonna be a live service. And like you said, like when you look at the trailer, you can see like there's editing frames and shots that you can see in there, like that I compared to the old like Spider-Man 2 trailer, that was like straight kind of not rips, but like rehashes of like shots and scenes and framing and stuff. And I'm like, that's like clearly been like reused, maybe for like a in-house pitch, or potentially it was like gonna be like the first trailer and then refined a little bit more for like coming whenever, later down the line at a Sony, state of play or whatever. In all honesty, I think with it being a live service title, I'm glad it's not come to fruition, because we've got too many of them. And it comes back to what I've always said about Insomniac. They are an incredibly talented team. I think they're like my favorite is obviously in the Sony first party is Sony Santa Monica, followed by Naughty Dog, followed by Insomniac. But I would say that Naughty Dog is objectively the best from like a prestigious standpoint in terms of what they create objectively. And then after that is Insomniac, and then is Sony Santa Monica personally, just because the amount of production that they put out every year is absolutely mind-blowing. And I feel like by them releasing a live service on the side that was going to be AAA and big, alongside their other releases, no doubt, that are like, one and done single player experiences as we know them.
Yeah.
I think that it would have been potentially awkward to have them have a part of the team support that live service while the other side of the team is also developing this. So for that, I'm glad it got cancelled. We've got too many in the industry right now. We've just seen Suicide Squad fail. Not to say that Spider-Man was on that level, but I think it was needed. I honestly.
Yep.
Palworld, I'm in the same wavelength as Brian. I really don't want to like belabor his point, just like he didn't want to with my my takes on the Connie Booth moving over. But I think that just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like, I had a really good running session tonight at the gym. It doesn't mean I'm ready for a marathon. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just take it back a little. Let's incrementally move up if we have to. Let's let our money and budget speak for us. And if they need to, they can do contract work. You know, like they can hire people in, temp work, stuff like that. They don't have to hire all these people on and then have like, oh shit, this is too much stuff. You know, it's too much. Sort of the bottom line is getting tanked because we've got too much upkeep. I think it's great. I'm so happy that the CEO is like, you know, basically like, yeah, cool. Like, we've got all this money now. We're not ashamed to admit it. And we're going to keep tight-knit because tight-knit studios are so needed. You know, these AAA, tight-knit, third-party studios, we're losing them by the day with this acquisition war. And I'm just happy for them, dude. Like, it's not the most original game, but it's something that, like, makes people go, you know, whether bad or good, what's Game Freak doing nowadays, you know? Like, they need to kind of step up their game. So, yeah, I'm on the same wavelength as Bryan. They don't need to expand. Let them breathe. And I'm excited to see what they come out with in the future. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is an instance of like them knowing their place, and it's really good to see that. And I don't know if I misheard you or you misspoke, but I mean, they're not even AAA, so it would be they're like
double
A.
Yeah, double A. I mean, yeah,
maybe I would say they're double A probably with the project.
Yeah, I'd say that. You could maybe argue indie pre this game.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so,
but I love the space they're in because, and the thing is, with this much success from Palworld, it could enable them to create other projects and benefit those employees' lives in major ways. Where they can take some risks, but they can take risks that make sense, like creating their own new IP and release another game. Maybe it comes out and doesn't do that well. That won't tank the company because they have all the stockpile money and success of Palworld. Whereas if they decided to jump from this to a 300-person team making a AAA game over 6 years, they've suddenly taken all of the great goodwill, all the money, all the luck, and gambled it on one project. And if that doesn't work, then it's just gone. It's just
and one thing I will say as a last point for this screams confidence to me, as in we can stand on our own 2 feet, which is very rare nowadays with AA and indie studios in the third party scene. People are screaming to get.
They might do it anyways, but there's really no reason to be acquired either.
No.
They have all that money,
exactly.
know, and it keeps coming in. But I could see them being acquired anyways, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it for the news today. I'm going to leave you guys as well as Joe with this question. I'll have Joe answer it. We'll get out of here. Would you rather question for the end of the episode? Had this one in the pocket earlier today, and I told Joe, don't let me forget. I was like, don't let me forget. It's about a PlayStation 6 controller if I forget, but I haven't forgot. So, Joe, which of these two scenarios would you prefer for the PlayStation 6 controller when the PlayStation 6 is announced? It is either an exact carbon copy of an Xbox controller with a PlayStation logo on it. The sticks are opposite. Yeah. It's the same thickness. It looks the same. It's just they basically just straight up. It's just an Xbox controller now with the Sony logo on it. Or the PS6 has it's an iteration of the DualSense. It looks similar, but it has a built-in smell technology where the controller emits smells, and you can't turn it off.
Oh, no.
And the battery life is half of the DualSense.
Okay,
which is already better.
Okay, right. So the battery life doesn't matter to me at all because I always have it plugged in. It's at arm's length, so that's whatever. The smell, though. Fuck, that's really bad because, like, if you go to, like, Old Yarram, right, in Bloodborne... Oh no, it's gonna smell like shit and piss,
dude. You're crawling through a sewer and it's like my controller smells like someone's shitting on me.
Oi, mate, what the fuck are you doing in that sewer? Yeah, no.
But if you go with the Xbox controller, it's just very plain and like, we're just copying Xbox now. Is it like the
basic Xbox series? Oh, that's bad because like I have one for the Series S and it's horrible. Like it's so geeky.
Yeah, it's just not as premium. What do you
I'm
think?
going with the stinky shot.
Stinky one?
Stinky shot.
Hey, just think of all the times you're like going through like beautiful like beaches and smelling like seashells.
Ghost of Tsushima in the flowers?
That'll be cool.
Shit, that would be hard.
It would be funny though, like there'd be a whole new narrative to gaming if we had controllers that emitted smells because you know how there's like people who are like, I can't play horror games because I'm scared, or I can't play driving games because I get sick. Then we knew people who are like, I can't play Souls games because whenever I'm required to go to the swampy areas, I like puke.
I think how much blood you're gonna smell through that controller.
Oh yeah, there's all the iron.
All that iron. What about you? What would you choose?
I would choose the smell controller because I want PlayStation's controller to have its own identity. Even though I love the Xbox controller, I would hate for Sony to just have the same controller. You know?
Yeah. I think they should get on that, dude. Just make it optional, Sony. Don't make it mandatory.
Optional, yeah, mandatory. Yeah. Like, the battery life of this controller would be 8 hours, but because of the smells, 3.
Yeah, I'll take it. So. One thing I will say before we get out of here is I just want to thank Wes for that voice clip. That was
a great voice clip.
Yeah, it was absolutely awesome. We love you to death, Wes, and send more.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if some of people's favorite discussion points of this episode was just what Wes asked.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah. Make sure you address me next time, you motherfucker.
There it is. Rub his face in it. And somebody rubs your face in it in a video game, then the PlayStation controller will just make shit smells come out.
My body is made out of sugar.
My body is made out of sugar. Great episode, guys. We love having you. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Sacred Games Daily. And as always, keep it sacred daily.
Peace.